Teenager Sarah Williams loves fantasy stories, but her world turns upside down when she accidentally wishes for goblins to take her baby stepbrother, Toby. To her shock, the Goblin King Jareth grants her wish. Sarah must now navigate a magical labyrinth within 13 hours to save Toby from becoming a goblin, facing numerous challenges and making unexpected friends along the way. Spoilers ahead. Sarah Williams was a teenager with a vivid imagination and loved fantasy stories, especially her favorite book, The Labyrinth. One evening, while pretending to be the heroine in her story at a park, she realized she was late to babysit her baby stepbrother, Toby. After a fight with her stepmother about being late and feeling ignored by her father, Sarah was left alone with a crying Toby. Upset that her stepmother gave Toby her favorite teddy bear, Lancelot, Sarah wished for someone to take her away from this awful place. To calm Toby, she told him a story about the Goblin King being in love with a girl, forced to babysit and giving her magical powers. One night, when the baby was cruel to her, she asked for the goblin's help to take away his brother. Sarah never thought this story could come true. Frustrated that Toby wouldn't stop crying, Sarah wished for the goblins to take her brother away. After leaving Toby, she realized he had stopped crying. When she went back to his room, he was gone, and Jareth, the Goblin King, appeared. She pleaded with the Goblin King to return Toby, explaining she didn't mean it. But he gave her a choice. She could either live out her dreams or spend 13 hours navigating his ever-changing maze, the labyrinth. If she reached the castle at the center in time, Toby would be saved from becoming a goblin. Determined to rescue her brother, Sarah set out to complete the challenge. She quickly met a grumpy, old dwarf named Hoggle, who showed her how to enter the labyrinth. Hoggle warned her not to take anything for granted there, but Sarah didn't find him very helpful and told him to leave. Sarah began walking, but she got frustrated because the path was just a straight line with no turns, even after a long walk. She met a small worm, who told her there's an opening right across from her. As she started to go left, the worm warned her not to go that way. She quickly turned right without letting the worm finish. After she left, the worm mentioned that if she had gone left, she would have gone straight to the castle. Meanwhile, Toby is in the castle with the goblins and the Goblin King. While Sarah is finding her way through the labyrinth, she marks some stones with her lipstick. However, as soon as she moves on, a small creature flips the stones, making her arrow marks disappear. She soon realizes that someone is flipping and changing her marks. Then, she meets the red and blue goblins and discovers the labyrinth is shifting. The goblins tell her that the only way to reach the castle is through one of the doors behind them, but warn that the other door leads to certain death. They also explain that one of them always tells the truth while the other always lies. Trying to outsmart them, she chooses the door behind the blue goblin, feeling confident she got smart. But as soon as she steps through, she falls into a hole. Luckily, a bunch of helping hands caught her. They ask if she wants to go up or down, and she chooses to go down. Meanwhile, the Goblin King watches her through his crystal ball, believing she'll soon give up and the baby will turn into one of them. He sends Hoggle to take her back to the beginning. Hoggle then tells Sarah they are in the oubliette, a dungeon. Sarah notices that Hoggle likes jewelry and offers him her plastic bracelet if he helps her reach the center of the labyrinth. Tempted by the gift, Hoggle agrees, even though he was told to send her back. This angers Jareth, who confronts them, taking away 3 hours of Sarah's time, and threatens to send Hoggle to the Bog of Eternal Stench for betraying him. When Jareth asked Sarah how she liked his labyrinth, she sarcastically said it was a piece of cake. In response, he sent a machine with spinning blades after her and Hoggle before disappearing. They managed to escape and climbed back up to the labyrinth using a ladder. Back in the labyrinth, Hoggle admits he's a coward and decides to stop helping Sarah. Feeling betrayed, Sarah steals his bag of jewelries. As Hoggle tries to get it back, they meet an old goblin with a talking bird hat. After asking the goblin for advice, they continue their journey. But when Hoggle gets scared by a howling creature, he admits he's only looking out for himself and abandons Sarah to face things alone. Sarah tried not to be scared, remembering that things aren't always what they seem in the labyrinth. She then met Ludo, a huge, furry but gentle creature, whom she befriended after saving him from some goblins. Sarah and Ludo come across 2 doors, with talking door knockers. She knocks on one door and it opens, and they both step inside. However, Ludo and Sarah soon got separated in a strange forest. Hoggle started to like Sarah and decides to go back and help her, but he is visited by the Goblin King. He gives Hoggle a peach and orders him to give it to Sarah. He also warned that if she kissed him, he'd be sent to the Bog of Eternal Stench. In the forest, Sarah encountered the Fieries, creatures that could remove their own heads. They tried to do the same to her, but she tossed their heads away. Hoggle came to help her, but when Sarah kissed Hoggle on the head to thank him, the ground shook, and they fell into the bog, but luckily didn't land in the muck. There, they found Ludo again and met Sir Didymus, a fox knight with a sheepdog mount, who agreed to help Sarah rescue her brother. As Sarah crossed a wooden bridge, it collapsed. Fortunately, she caught a branch and held on. Ludo then held, showing his ability to control rocks. the rocks moved and formed a new bridge, letting them cross the river safely. After crossing, Hoggle, worried about what will happen if Sarah eats the peach, tries to secretly throw it in the river, but Jareth warns him. Meanwhile, at the castle, Jareth and Toby watch Sarah, saying that once she eats the fruit, she will forget everything. With the castle nearby, nothing seemed left to stop her from reaching Toby in time, except for one thing. The Goblin King made Hoggle give Sarah the peach. Sarah was hungry, so Hoggle had no choice but to give it to her. He handed it to her and left in shame for following the king's orders. After eating the peach, Sarah fell into a dream. She was in a ballroom filled with masked faces, wearing a beautiful silver gown. The Goblin King held her tightly as they danced. Realizing she had something important to do, she pulled away from him and broke free from the crystal ball that trapped her. Sarah woke up in a junkyard, holding the peach, but couldn't remember what she needed to do. A goblin woman, carrying a pile of junk, led her to a room that looked just like her bedroom. Sarah thought it had all been a bad dream and flopped onto her bed, but when she opened her bedroom door, the goblin woman tried to get her to collect knickknacks. Among the items was her Labyrinth book, which reminded her she needed to save Toby. After realizing this, she threw a toy and the room started collapsing. Her friends, who had followed her to the junkyard, pulled her to safety. They hurried to the nearby castle with less than an hour left. They entered the Goblin City, which surrounded the castle. They faced a giant robot, but Hoggle saved the day. He jumped onto the robot, revealing a goblin inside. Hoggle threw out the goblin and tried to control the robot himself, but he didn't know how. The robot broke and Hoggle jumped out. He admitted his mistakes to Sarah, who forgave him and returned his jewels. In the castle, Jareth sits relaxed with Toby, believing Sarah is no longer a threat. However, a goblin informed him that Sarah was approaching the castle. He then ordered his goblins to attack them. Sarah and her friends were soon surrounded by hordes of goblins. After being cornered and trapped in a house, Ludo then held a bunch of rocks came in to fend off the enemies until they retreated. Despite the chaos, they reached the castle. The throne room was empty, and a clock showed Sarah she had less than 5 minutes to find her brother. The only way Jareth could have taken Toby was up the stairs. Sarah decided to go alone, despite her friend's concern. When Sarah reached the room at the top, she had to hold on to the wall to keep from getting dizzy. The room was filled with stairways leading nowhere and walkways crisscrossing in every direction. There was no clear up or down, and she didn't know which way to go. Suddenly, the Goblin King appeared below her, and she gasped. He effortlessly walked around the ledges, even walking straight through her, trying to intimidate her. With an evil grin, he threw a crystal, and she watched as it bounced around the room before landing in Toby's hands. Toby seemed to be sitting upside down above her. Now that she knew where he was, she just had to reach him, but Toby kept moving every time she got close. Unlike her, he didn't realize he wasn't supposed to be able to defy gravity and crawl on the ceiling. Finally, she saw him directly below her, sitting on the floor and dangling his feet over a ledge. Toby was right there, 20 feet below her, but she had no way to reach him. Sarah knew she had very little time left. She had to save Toby from becoming a goblin. With a gulp and a wince, bracing for the pain of her fall, she jumped, but she didn't hit the floor. Instead, as she kept falling, the room broke apart around her. Eventually, her feet landed on solid ground, and she saw the Goblin King emerging from the shadows, dressed in all white with a flowing feathered cape. As he approached, she began to recite the lines from her story that would defeat him and save her brother. The king interrupted, offering her dreams and even himself, but she was determined to save Toby. She finished her lines and suddenly found herself back at home. The defeated Goblin King flew out the window, vanished to live as an owl. Sarah ran upstairs to check on her brother and found Toby sleeping peacefully. She went to her room and started to put away items from her childhood fantasies. As she did, she saw her friends from the labyrinth in her mirror. They told her they would always be there if she needed them. She replied that she would always need them. As she turns back, all her friends and some characters she encountered at the labyrinth are in her room. And the movie ends here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for our next movie.